We have breaking news out of Nintendo. On September 25th, Nintendo announced that Doug Bowser, the head of Nintendo of America, the president and CEO, is stepping down and retiring on December 31st. Doug Bowser was the man responsible for filling in for Reggie Fils-Aimé, the legendary Nintendo president that was over Nintendo of America for, I want to say, over a decade and a half. He had been there for such a long time, and his presence was known in the Nintendo community, was known amongst fans, and he was in a bunch of different directs. They did a bunch of funny little skits back in the Wii U era and the Wii era with those early Nintendo directs when they were just trying to do anything to get people to care about them. And now we pass on the torch from Doug Bowser to the new president of Nintendo, Devon Pritchard. Now, apparently, Devon has been working in the video game industry for over 19 years, and she was at the time of this recording and will be until December 31st, the Executive Vice President of Revenue, Marketing, and Consumer Experience. She will also be the very first female Nintendo of America president, which is also a cool fact. And apparently she is a huge Pikmin fan, which of course probably got her the job. Miyamoto, I am very confident, was pushing for a Pikmin person to be the president. Now, Reggie was the president and CEO of Nintendo of America, and so was Doug Bowser. But now, Devon is going to be the president, but she is not going to be the CEO. The new CEO will be Satoru Shibata, who was a big part of Nintendo of Europe and was in a bunch of those Nintendo Directs way back in the day. He has a very fun and goofy side to him that was in a lot of those other Nintendo Directs, and he is already very busy in Japan. He does a lot of work with Nintendo of Japan. Now he will be the CEO of Nintendo of America, probably to help strengthen those bonds between America and Japan and to get people a little bit more on the same page. Now, this is very interesting for a lot of reasons, and I wouldn't be surprised if Doug was retiring because of one of two reasons. Either one, he's just getting up there in age and he wants to retire when he can. He's been doing this for about, 6 years now? Reggie retired back in 2019, and Doug Bowser was able to take over, I think, in 2020, which was obviously a horrible year for him to start off. Then, for the past 5 years, he's been the president and CEO, and we really only saw him in that 2019 Nintendo Direct when he was doing that fun little Bowser skit, and that was it. And then we saw him a little bit earlier this year doing an interview in which people were asking him why Mario Kart World was worth $80, and he was saying, we're gonna price things accordingly, right? We're gonna make sure that everything is evaluated and all of our games are priced according to that valuation, which was unfortunate, to say the least, for a lot of people to not see a lot about Bowser, and then all of a sudden he's out here telling us why Mario Kart World was in fact worth $20 extra compared to the normal Switch 1 games, which were all worth $60 with the Tears of the Kingdom exception. So Doug doesn't really have a lot of impact that he is leaving behind. He was filling in for some extremely large shoes in Reggie Fils-Aimé, and no one could ever have possibly filled in those shoes. I mean, Reggie was almost like a Nintendo god, right? People were really infatuated with Reggie, and he was so fun. Like, every time we saw him show up in anything, or anytime he said anything, the goodwill that he had established over the years, all of the love and care and passion that he clearly had for Nintendo specifically, not just games, not just profit, but for Nintendo, really shone through, and we were able to attach ourselves to him a little bit as the consumer, as the fan, to him, and know that he was kind of a fan as well, because before Iwata's unfortunate passing, him and Miyamoto were very close friends. They were very tight. They worked well together, and for all those Nintendo Directs that they did together, I really felt like people were just happy to see these big company leaders, these big industry shakers, all be so fun and almost clumsy in a way, in like a very endearing kind of way. Then Nintendo had no need to really do that kind of wacky thing anymore because, well, I mean, they still do it every once in a while, but they have no need to be like that anymore because there's no crowd that they're trying to appeal to that is not already there, right? They had no support hardly at all from anyone during the Wii U era. Even the most hardcore of Nintendo fans were abandoning the console because they weren't getting the games that they wanted, and things looked to be heading in a very dreary direction. And a lot of people, including myself, were able to stick out that Wii U generation and were there pretty much day one for the Nintendo Switch. And once they really turned everything around with the Switch generation, so many more people came aboard, and Nintendo had no need to do wacky, weird things to try to catch people's attention. The attention was already there, and every Nintendo Direct that aired was getting millions and millions of views, and these games were selling like hotcakes on the Switch. So what did Doug Bowser have to do? His job was literally just to make sure that momentum kept going. And boy, did he, right? From 2019 to 2025, Nintendo and the Switch blew up. I mean, they went from being pretty much irrelevant, from being almost bankrupt, from having to go from first to third party potentially. They went from that gutter to the top of the industry in terms of profit, in terms of sales, in terms of recognizability, and in terms of expanding their brand to not just video games, but also movies and merchandise and theme parks. They were doing everything they could from the past 6 years of Doug Bowser's tenure there to make sure Nintendo was more than just games, because sometimes games don't go the way you want them to because developers have creative ideas that aren't as good of ideas as they might have initially thought. Star Fox Zero, for example, was a Miyamoto child, right? He absolutely adored that game. It was his baby. He wanted that game to succeed so much, and he is a very brilliant designer and is such a great man. And yet, that game was horrible, and people despised it, and it probably is the reason that we will never get another Star Fox unless they decide to really shake up the formula and do something different. Because of that, because even the biggest and brightest minds can make mistakes while developing their games by just trying to take too many creative liberties, they are always on the lookout for new ways to make sure people can stay in Nintendo if things start to go sour on their main business model, which is, of course, games. So Doug Bowser was able to continue that ship forward, and the games continued to be, yes, the focal point. Yes, everyone was really loving the games and were buying them, but he helped be a big part of the expansion of Nintendo. His legacy will be one that is not remembered very well by a lot of people for anything more than his name, Bowser, which is very ironic to this very day, but still, his legacy should be something that we remember fondly. Like, even though we didn't see a lot of him, we never saw hardly any part of him. He had been at Nintendo for a long time before Reggie was there. He stepped up and fulfilled that president role pretty dang well, in my opinion, because things kept going the way they were supposed to be going. We continued to get amazing games. The Switch continued to be the best console of all time at the time, and now people are excited and are really talking about Nintendo. And for better or worse, Nintendo is a talking point and Nintendo is relevant. I don't think Nintendo is worth all the hate that they're getting. I don't think any of that is justified. Some of it absolutely is. Some of the stuff they do is very scummy, but I think a lot of it is just overblown. But the fact of the matter is, back in the Wii U generation, they were doing some crazy things that no one was talking about because no one cared. And when no one cares, your brand isn't relevant, and games aren't even being talked about as horrible anymore, that's when you know you've truly lost everything, is when no one even talks about your failures. So they were able to really change that direction back into a positive one. Nintendo is still relevant and more relevant than ever. People will not shut up about the Switch 2, about these games, about key cards, about all of these controversial points. Whether good or bad, Nintendo is relevant again, and that, in large part, is due to Doug Bowser. Thank you, Doug Bowser, for allowing Nintendo to continue on that amazing trajectory that Iwata himself and Reggie were able to send in that direction. They were able to kick us off into this generation, and hopefully this will be continued in a bright manner, and that the Switch 2 will be even better for people who are disappointed with it now, and for people who love it, that it will continue to be an amazing console. This is where we get into the new stuff here, right? Devon Pritchard, what did she say about becoming the Nintendo of America president? She said, "I am humbled and excited to take on this new role. Doug has been a fantastic mentor, and I look forward to building on the incredible foundation he has helped establish. With characters and worlds that offer something for everyone, my focus will be continuing to build on Nintendo's legacy of surprising and delighting our longtime fans, while at the same time welcoming new players into the Nintendo family." She has been at Nintendo for a very, very long time. And of course, she's a big Pikmin fan, which is very, very fun. And she's also a woman, which is really cool to see Nintendo hiring a woman for the very first time as the Nintendo of America president. That is just a cool factoid. So what else do we know about Devon? Well, Jeff Keighley, he has been in the industry for a very long time. He is the host of Summer Game Fest and the Game Awards, which is much more popular now than it was about a decade ago when they first started it. But Jeff Keighley apparently knows Devon and had some pretty kind words to say about her. The incredible Devon Pritchard, a longtime Nintendo executive, will succeed Doug Bowser as the new head of Nintendo of America, effective January 1st, 2026. Bowser will retire on December 31st. Congratulations, Devon. Then this commenter right below Jeff Keighley's post said she's a fan of Pikmin and got the special thanks on Metroid Prime Remastered. We might be back. And if you didn't know, back when Metroid Prime Remastered released on the Switch, I believe in 2023, they did not include the initial staff from the credits. They did not include some of those people who worked on the remastered versus the actual original game, and that was a very big sting for a lot of people because it was like, come on, Nintendo, why do you always do this with your remakes and remasters to where you only credit the people who worked on the remakes and remasters and not the people who didn't participate in that, who made the initial game, who made the game you're remaking? Why can you not just credit them? It's very simple to put someone's name in it. In fact, you just have to take it out. That's what they're doing. They were taking it out to actually not include them. Well, this commenter says that Devon is the reason that they were able to add those credits back in the game, that she was actually advocating for those people's work, and it makes a lot of sense, to be honest, because Retro Studios, the studios behind Metroid Prime and all the Metroid games outside of the 2D Metroid series, which is made by Mercury Steam, but Retro Studios is known for being a little bit of the black sheep in terms of Nintendo developers because Nintendo, pretty much like 97-98% of their studios and developers are based in Japan. Retro Studios is based in Texas of America, and of course, if you want to have good communication with people from Nintendo and from Japan, you're gonna have to make sure you also have a good president, a good communications person within the American base of this Nintendo sect. And of course, there are also a bunch of different nuances between cultures of America and Japan, things that are more acceptable here that aren't over there. For example, in Japan, you have to charge for DLC. You literally are not allowed to give out free DLC content. You have to charge at least a minimum amount for people to access new content in video games, which is kind of crazy that free DLC is not a thing over there. There's also this weird thing that people have been talking about a lot in Japan, how like credits just aren't as important. They're not as expected. It's not like as important as it is over here. Over here, it's a sign of respect. It's like, okay, I developed this game. I was a part of this movie or whatever, and they're going to put me in the credits because of course you need to credit me. I am in it. And for me to be in that, I can then put it on my resume and tell other people about it to help me get a better job because this product was really great. And so maybe if I worked upon this product and it's seen in the end of this, like, oh, my name's in the credits, then when I go over here, I can get a job. But in Japan, apparently that's just not how it works. So with those different cultural nuances, I think it is very important to have someone like Devon who went to bat for those Retro Studio developers and said, no, we need to make sure we include these developers' names. Put them in the credits. It's not that hard. You literally removed it. You did more work removing the names than you would have just leaving them in and adding the new ones. So Devon seems to be a woman of the people, right? She seems to be someone who's going to stand up to Nintendo if something is wrong. And what is happening right now that everyone cannot stand? Game keycards. Now, I don't know if she will be able to stop game keycards, and I honestly don't think that they are as big of a deal as people are making them out to be, but Nintendo is pretty much offering third-party developers and indie developers two choices. One, they get a cartridge that is up to 64 gigabytes, and that cartridge is the most expensive cartridge that you can possibly buy to put your game on it. So if your game is only like 5 or 4 gigabytes, you have to pay for the 64 gigabyte one to make a physical copy. And by that point, it's just not worth the profit return, right? Because what if people don't buy it? It's just not worth it. And if you don't want to shell out all that money, or if you don't even have all that money, if you're like an indie developer, then what's your other option? A game keycard, which is so much cheaper because it's essentially a download code within a actual cartridge. So there is kind of a fix here, right? Nintendo could just offer these developers what they offered them in the Switch generation, which is access to cheaper cartridges. Now, maybe there's something going on here internally with the Switch 2 hardware to where it doesn't work in that same way. I am not at all an expert on this topic here, so I don't know if there is something that is keeping them from doing it and people are just acting like there's nothing that's happening and that Nintendo is just being greedy. That could very well be the case. Nintendo does like their money. They have historically always liked to charge as much as they can for their games and DLC. But I also think that a lot of times they're going to do what is best overall, not the short-term profit, the long-term profit, and game keycards may prove to be something that is just not worth it for the long term, because a lot of these third-party games have disappointed for developers because, one, they weren't able to get those dev kits, they weren't able to get access to this console early enough to make their games better, and two, just the overall game preservation aspect of this. If you're only getting a download code, there will eventually come a day in which your Switch 2 does not work anymore in terms of online, and you can no longer download those games, and then the game you paid for and played all of those hundreds of hours on, if it's not already downloaded onto your console, will be gone forever. Devon seems like the type of person that if this is in fact Nintendo just being greedy, that she will go to bat for us and she will do whatever she can to make sure the developers are getting a better experience, and in turn the fans are better as well, because what was that second part of her title there? She is the Executive Vice President of Revenue, but also the Marketing and Consumer Experience Vice President. So she not only was able to display that by getting those credits back for the Metroid Prime developers, but also there is a chance that she might be able to get the consumers a little bit more of that good experience that she was able to get the developers. The new CEO, on the other hand, Satoru Shibata, has been with Nintendo for about 40 years, and he spent about 15 years as the head of Nintendo of Europe. He has been in several Nintendo Directs doing a bunch of random goofy things. He loves playing video games. He has very clearly made a mark on Nintendo and has really followed in the footsteps of Iwata. He loves Ace Attorney, he loves Famicom Detective Club games and Professor Layton type games. Those niche games, those niche franchises that both Devon and now Satoru love are going to be the head of Nintendo of America. So of course we're going to continue to get our Marios, we're going to continue to get our Zeldas, our 3D Donkey Kongs, our Mario Karts. We're going to continue to get these big franchises. But I can also see Nintendo starting to lean a little bit more into some of their older IP, into some of their more niche IP, and that is honestly the shift we have already started to see. Nintendo is not working to knock our socks off this year. That is not what 2025 has been about. To my shock and to a lot of people's shock, that's just not what they're trying to do. In 2017, they were trying to make a statement. They were trying to tell us they were back. And if we weren't in, then we were missing out. This time around, they're not trying to get people invested. They're trying to get people from old-time fan bases to come back. You remember that 3D Donkey Kong game back in the N64? We're giving you a brand new one to go along with what likely will be a Donkey Kong spin-off. So both older generations and newer generations will want to pick up this game and then invest even more in the grander atmosphere of Nintendo, in the grander base of Nintendo. What else is this year? Kirby Air Riders. Sakurai, instead of using his talent and his development team to make a new Smash Brothers, which would have sold a bajillion copies within this first year of the console, instead of doing that, they have him work on Kirby Air Riders. And Sakurai didn't even choose this, right? Nintendo came up to him and asked him to make a Kirby Air Riders. And he was essentially saying, guys, you are making a Mario Kart this year. Why would I also make another racing game? And they said, screw it, just make one anyways. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Of course, it is a well-recognized series, but it has been waiting for a long time to have its big break, and it probably won't get it with this game either. And an even bigger franchise, Fire Emblem, is still considered a little bit niche to a lot of people, was just the big closer to the Nintendo Direct in September. We have had so many niche franchises come out this first year, and they are really catering to that core gamer audience. The big audiences are already here. They're already investing in the Switch 2. They already care because of the Switch hype that was built up from the first generation. Now those big games are going to continue to pour out into this console over its entire lifespan, and people will continue to get Switch 2s and get invested as those big games trickle out. But as we see a new president and CEO come for Nintendo of America, I can't help but think they are really moving forward with a new vision. They're putting that big crowd in the back burner, to be honest. They're saying, we assume you're going to come back and you're going to keep buying. And so far, they've been right. So far, they've been successful. For Mario Kart World's controversy and hate and chaos, the game sold 5 million copies in 3 days. The Nintendo Switch 2 sold over 7 million units in 6 weeks. We still do not have updates on how well this console has been selling since those initial margins, but I can only assume it has been selling absurdly well, and I would not be at all surprised if we found out that this thing has already outsold the entirety of the Wii U's sales. Now we know, moving forward, what their plan is. Their plan is to continue to cater to large audiences with broader appeal, like with their movies, like with their merchandise, and of course with their big games like Mario Kart World, but also to appeal to those niche crowds, to make sure the consumers themselves are being catered to make sure we get games like Emio Smiling Man, to make sure we get games like Metroid and Famicom Detective Club, to make sure we get games like Pikmin. These people have been put in charge to do exactly that, and I believe we are going to see a new Nintendo, and that is why things have been so weird lately. This kind of just changed my mind on how Nintendo is moving, and I really do like it, and I appreciate them being bold enough to move forward with this vision by really instilling change from the top to the bottom. Doug Bowser may have decided all on his own he wanted to retire, or maybe they decided to say, you know what, we want to move in a different direction, and he just said, okay, then I'll retire. Either way, this is a good change for Nintendo. This is really good. And I couldn't be happier, to be honest. I am very pleased with this change, and I cannot wait to see what the future brings for Nintendo and what these two individuals are going to bring to the table. What are they going to do with Nintendo Directs moving forward? Are they going to have any sort of presence? Well, maybe we won't know until 2026, because that's when they start to actually take into effect these new jobs. But still, I cannot wait to see what happens. So, thank you very much for making it to the end of this video. Make sure you press that like button and that hype button. The hype button especially helps out the channel. Make sure you subscribe to join the community and click that notification bell to know exactly when my videos release. Consider joining my membership program, a couple bucks a month, for early access to all my videos and just to support me as a content creator. Click on the left side of your screen to see the Mario Kart World update video. That game just got fixed. And click on the right side of your screen to see my breakdown of the third Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment trailer. You are amazing. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.